Right, since the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak, life as we know it has changed drastically. It's affected everything that we do, the way we gather as well, and this now also affects South Africa's upcoming local government elections. The Independent Electoral Commission conducted consultations with political parties on whether the elections should happen or not as the country deals with the pandemic. This is following the consultations. Former Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke was mandated to conduct an inquiry into whether the conditions will allow for free and fair elections. His report, it recommended that the elections be postponed to February of 2022 to allow time for the country to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. The IEC has since welcomed this recommendation. Now they'll go to the court to seek the postponement. In light of all of this, we ask, how would the postponement affect governance as well as political parties? Joining us to discuss this is elections analyst Wayne Sussman. Wayne, an absolute pleasure. Let's start with the crux of the matter. Why is it that the IEC will be going to court?
Good morning. It's great to be on your show. The IEC has to, first of all, choose which court it's going to go to. And I think that was the most interesting thing which came out of the press conference yesterday. I think it came from a question asked by your colleague Imbali Titani, because it's not clear whether they're going to approach the Constitutional Court or the Electoral Court. They need to approach the court which is most likely to grant them the request, which would be a postponement of the elections in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, in light of the fact that it'll be difficult for parties to campaign like they ordinarily campaign. We know that the world, and certainly South Africa, has been turned upside down by the COVID-19 pandemic. We know that businesses are operating differently. We know that government departments are operating differently. We know that there are no live sports events at the moment. So how do political parties do things differently? And one of the key things political parties have to do is spread their message to the public and spread their message to as many voters as possible. And a traditional way of doing that is in South Africa is through large rallies. And what political parties and what I think health care practitioners who made submissions to the Moseneke hearings are saying that it is not wise to allow campaigning to go ahead at this stage. And the one other crucial thing is, remember, the IEC has to fulfill certain mandates in order for there to be a free and fair election. One of those is the registration of voters. So if we had to go to our respective voting stations on the registration weekend, I would say it's a very low-risk affair from a COVID-19 perspective, because there are going to be not that many people showing up. However, in order for the election to be free and fair, the IEC has to access old age homes. And right now, we are currently in a level 4 scenario, and that might change tomorrow. But right now, the IEC is not really isn't able to go into many old age homes because they are trying to protect their residents there. And if our old people who've moved to an old age home or need to re-register cannot participate in the registration process, that means that they will not be able to vote on election day. So I think the IEC is looking at the tight time frame and saying, we need, from a operational perspective and from a healthcare perspective, we need to postpone these elections.
Wayne, I mean, look, we've had COVID-19 now for what, the last, say, 18 months or so in the country. February is not that far away. In terms of it being a free and fair elections, in terms of parties getting the chance to canvass, that might not be something that will happen, as COVID-19 doesn't seem like it will be going anywhere, especially if you're looking at our slow pace of our vaccination rollout and all other factors taken into account. So regarding the February deadline, Wayne, you know, we've had like the likes of Musi Maimane and also the likes of Peter Groenewald saying, well, it's not going to go anywhere, just do it now. Is it something that can be guaranteed, and what happens if by February we're still sitting in the same situation?
It's a great question. I would say it's worrying if we just carry on kicking the can down the road. And let's remind the viewers that elections have taken place in numerous African countries and certainly around the world in the last 18 months. there are other ways of campaigning. We know that South Africans possibly spend too much time on social media. That's a form of campaigning. So I think it's a great question, because remember that constitutionally the election was supposed to take place by 1 November 2021, which is 5 years and 3 months of the term of office of the municipalities across the country. We're sitting with a scenario where I would say you have a lot of councillors who are waiting to retire. You have political parties who want to offer voters new candidates, fresher candidates, people with new ideas, new energy. And this state of flux is, yes, I understand the dilemma of concern for people's health and people's safety. But I think there might be extended political paralysis, especially if there's a fourth wave in February. No one's a Nostradamus over here, especially if there's a fourth wave in 2021 in February. So this is a very difficult process. But the IEC has made it clear that it has to take place before the end of February. We know, as the former leader of the opposition, Sussman Maimane, said, there's very little chance of this election happening in Christmas, very little chance of this election happening in January, because people go home or people go on holiday during the festive season. We also know that it's possibly, even though November, it's not much further than October, are the IEC going to go to the court just to delay the elections by a few weeks? So it does look like February is the most likely time for this extension, for the elections to take place in this extended period. But the million-dollar question is, what if there's a fourth wave? The one thing I'd be optimistic about is that I think a lot of people, hopefully in the 35 plus age groups, will have been vaccinated, so less people will be needing to be hospitalized, less people will hopefully, not so many people will sadly be losing their lives, so people might be more confident in going to participate in the democratic process.
Now, what this pandemic has done, Wayne, it's forced a lot of us to think outside of the box, but it seems like our electioneering remains the age-old same traditional way. I mean, is there, and it might be a difficult question for you to answer, but is there perhaps other ways that the political parties can go about this thing? Because as you mentioned, you know, we might not be out of the woods by February, and the elections must take place by February. So in between, somewhere campaigning has to happen. And according to where we are at the moment as a country, it doesn't seem like it will be anytime soon.
Yeah, so two methods which just come to mind, as I said, using social media, using WhatsApp, using SMSs, and then which a lot of South African political parties are already doing. The other thing is drive-by campaigning. So people getting in cars and driving through the different areas where people will be voting, small limited rallies. I think the publicity of candidates or leaders in particular places, just doing a walkabout, because I agree with you, it's unlikely for there to be large rallies. Is it likely for there to be smaller rallies? Probably not by February 2022. So political parties have to become more innovative, and we have to ultimately give South Africans need to know that elections are going to happen freely and fairly and regularly. And I would hate to see the elections postponed beyond February, because I think it's important. Not necessarily for people. I'm not saying that people should vote for new parties. They can carry on voting for the same political parties they've supported in the past, but vote for new candidates. I think those political parties will want to put up new candidates, fresher faces, new people with energy and ideas, and the longer we delay the election, the more the enthusiasm of those candidates and those parties will wane.
Now, Wayne, what then happens to governance if, for whatever reason, these elections can't take place by February 2022?
Correct. So we know that budgets ultimately have to be passed. We know that traditionally the State of Nation address is in February. From the State of Nation address, the Minister of Finance takes the ideas from the State of Nation address and does their budget. And from that, obviously, there's also the State of Province addresses. And ultimately from that, the local governments have to give their the mayors and the people who govern those municipalities have to give their deliver their budgets as well. I think that is going to be critical. That's why I think Judge Moseneke and the IEC want to make sure that the elections take place by February. Let's also remind the viewers that by-elections have taken place across the country. Now, obviously, by-elections are lower frequency events. So I just want to remind viewers that elections have been taking place when COVID numbers have been dropping. So there is a precedent for elections to take place freely, fairly, and safely. And let's really hope that we do not extend a potential constitutional crisis. Let's hope that we do not complicate things from a governance perspective, as you've just asked me, with regards to budgets and mandates and missions. And let's hope that these elections take place by February 2022.
Wayne Sussman, thank you so much for your time. He's an elections analyst, breaking down what we should be expecting coming out of the IEC over the next couple of days.